The map is going to be Naro Station, spawning in the bottom left-hand position as the blue Protoss from Woongjin Stars. His name is Flying.
His opponent spawning on the top right-hand position as the red Zerg, playing for SK Telecom T1, and his name is SoO.
So we do have a Protoss versus Zerg on this matchup, or on this map.
Finally.
Finally. Not a PvP, which is what we've been seeing for the most part on this map. Definitely, I think people feel that it is a little bit Protoss favored, despite having a somewhat open natural choke area. Like, there's two different entrances, but you can easily kill off the rocks at one of the positions, so not a big deal. And you know what, overall, the surface area isn't that big.
Yeah, and remember last time when we had the first PvZ on this map, a Protoss player named Deer, who was going for the, the classic 3-base Mass Tempest build.
He caught me off guard there because he said classic, and I was like, oh, he's going to talk about Colossus or something. And then you're like, he just went for the Mass Tempest build. Very common against Zerg.
It has been commented by some players on ladder, I have to say. Hyun was defeated by a few times, and the other notable Zerg players on Korean ladder, they fell down to the Tempest build. And what the Protoss player does is they just sit inside 3 bases, mass cannon, and just get the Tempest. And it actually works out on this map if the Zerg player decides to take the 3rd base that's closer to their opponent's base instead of further away.
That's true. And then you know what? Like, the Zerg player also has to worry about, well, where do I take my 4th base? Because this Protoss player, he just went ahead and grabbed his 3rd real fast. So there's, of course, M. Johan, coach boxer for SK Telecom. And hopefully he has helped out SoO devise strategy to win on this map here.
Well, the spawning pull first by SoO, and his opponent went for the Nexus first and then the Forge.
Yeah, so if we see 6 Lings out here, this actually may be a bit of a tough place for Flying here, and SoO does scout everything. He's only making a pair of Lings, though. Probably didn't anticipate how greedy his opponent would be.
He doesn't have any extra larvas right now, so let's see what he makes from the extra larva. Of course, after getting the 200th victory in Pro League, he got a little plague block for his achievement. Now the Forge does finish up, and Flying, he's just going to make a cannon at the natural, trying to wall off as completely as possible because his opponent went for the 14 pool instead of the 15 hatch.
Yeah. Alright, so Gateway on the way as well from our Protoss player here, and really just standard macro stuff here. We don't see any gas from the Zerg, so he's not going to go for something like we saw earlier on in the day between Haiva and Bong. And the 3rd hatchery does go down, so it's going to be a standard opening, and I do like the position where the 3rd hatchery is because the other hatchery can be hit by those Tempests quite easily.
Yeah, I feel like as a Zerg player, if you're playing on this map as a Protoss player, it's just better to take the base that's further away because you don't want the Protoss players to start abusing the Tempest in that area of the map. And look at this SoO, he wants to gain he wants to try to make sure that he can gain extra paths inside his opponent's natural.
I like it, the girl is like only halfway hiding there. She's like, oh, I'm scared, hide me. And the guy's just like, eh. And then you have some random fan in the back going, hey, look at me, guys.
It's like they want to be on camera. They really want to be on camera.
They should have focused the camera on him, man. I guarantee you he would have been more entertaining.
Well, they don't want to focus on those people who understands that the camera is on them. They want to catch people off guard.
All right, destructible debris falling there, going to close off that passageway into the natural. And the 3rd base here is scouted as well. So we're seeing Flying follow this up with a Stargate, which is pretty much your bread and butter when it comes to PvZ. We see the Stargate basically every game now against Zerg players.
Oh yeah, it's like watching PvZ back from Brood War. They always went for the Stargate unless they try to pressure their opponent with the Zealous early on, and then started getting a Stargate. So Corsairs were pretty much the important unit composition when it came to PvZ in Brood War, and in StarCraft too. Phoenix is becoming a little more normal, I have to say.
Yeah.
In all of these matchups.
Pretty much standard at this point, I want to say.
Yeah.
Now this is going to be quite annoying for our Woongjin player because if those rocks die at the 3rd, then that's 2 humongous choke points that essentially he has to deal with if he wants to take that 3rd base over the other pocket 3rd But that one may be a little bit closer to his opponent in a direction that he doesn't necessarily want to go to.
Yeah, well, you do have the smaller choke earlier in the game. Well, if you take the third base, that's a little bit, you know, that little pocket one at the 6 o'clock position, there is a long path between the natural and the third base. So Protoss players, I think they favor the other third base a little bit more than the 6 o'clock one because, you know, it's easier to choke from the top, from the left top position. Yeah. And as long as these rocks do not get taken out, you know, it's easy to fortify that base, and that's the reason why SoO is taking the sound, to make sure that if Flying does indeed decide to expand on this map, he wants Flying to, you know,
work for it. He's got to work for it.
Yeah, he's got to work for it, and he wants Flying to put the Nexus in an open area.
Yeah, that's also true. So the rocks are destroyed. Flying will see this, and as he flies over the Zerglings with his Phoenix. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. And now the Phoenix are going to move in here. Maybe they'll be able to snipe off a Queen. We do have 6 Spore Crawlers on the way from from S2 here. So he is really committing to this attack here. And one of the Spore Crawlers will finish. The Queen will end up going down here, though.
Yeah, just 2 lifts, and the Phoenixes can take out the Queen no problem, but Flying needs to put the Spore Crawlers in position, also needs to make sure the Queen does not start following around the Phoenix.
Yeah, also, look at that. We have a pretty solid drone count here from our Zerg player. I think he's up to 67 at this point. He's getting a Hydralisk in already right now, but he's essentially fully saturated on all of his bases, up to 70 workers now.
Did I just say Flying needs to put the Spore in the right position?
Maybe, but let's not worry about it.
We got the Protoss and the Zerg, and you guys know what I meant. Now, Flying, after seeing the Hydra stand, he's getting a Colossus tech for himself with the Robobot. Like I said, he's trying to take the third base, but it's completely open, and the Zerglings get a force around on the Nexus.
The Zerglings are going to force a cancel on that Nexus. You always got to feel good as a Zerg player whenever you can delay that third base from a from the Protoss player. And I mean, he sacrificed 2 Zerglings to do that. That was already an amazing trade there for him, and he's going to be able to follow this up with Hydras, and he may eventually go into the Muta play afterwards, which is quite common from the Zergling Hydra composition.
Now, it doesn't hurt as much at this point in the game because the Nexus just started, and it was canceled right after. So the first time around, it's okay, but if the Nexus canceling happens a few more times, then that's when the Protoss player, they're going to take the economic damage from not taking the third base early on.
Yep, up Flying, trying to do a little bit of Phoenix harassment here, but he will be thwarted. And there are 13 Hydras out here, 15 Zerglings total. Roach Warren on the way, interestingly enough, as well here from our Zerg player. And his Spire is about halfway done, I want to say, at this point. And also grabbing that 4th base as well. So really, SoO is starting to just power hard here through the mid-game.
Yeah, but look at this Flying as getting a 2nd Stargate. So he seems like he wants to slowly transition into some Sky Toss army after getting the Colossus out. Or maybe he's anticipating some kind of Muta switch from his opponent.
Yep, that's very possible. And the Spire is almost complete. So seeing the Mutas as a follow-up here would not be surprising at all. And Flying losing a few of those Phoenix there a little bit carelessly. And the Colossus is revealed here. We don't have Thermal Lance done just yet, but it's getting quite close there. And Roach Speed on the way, so I think we're going to be seeing Corruptors here. Yep, Corruptors 9 Corruptors on the way.
Corruptors is the you know, the most normal build after going for the Hydras because you want to counter against the Colossus. But look at this, the Zerglings going for the Cybernetic Core. Nice force field at the last second prevents SoO from actually busting it down.
Yeah, it looked like SoO was going to be able to kill that here, and you know, he's really just darting back and forth here. Hydra's going to abuse their range now, but they have to be careful because those Colossi are going to shred those Hydras apart without any anti-air Corruptor support. Now the Roaches are out as well. We do have Void Ray production starting, though, from our Protoss player.
Seems like he wants to use the Void Rays to counter the Corruptors, but at this point, it's not going to do as much because it's 2 Void Rays that's in the making compared to 9 Corruptors that are already out on the field. If Flying actually wants to defend against his opponent's army, he needs to buy enough time to get the Void Rays out. And the
Cybernetics Core does go down. Unfortunate for Flying here. I feel like he's kind of in a really hairy situation here because the Zerglings got into his main base. They're killing off a lot of workers there, and Flying's just going to lose a lot of probes to this essentially for free here.
Yeah, and this also puts SoO in a better position to engage into the third base. Now remember, there's 2 hallucinated Colossus at the front. Nexus Cannon does go down, but it seems like he doesn't. Seems like now he's getting into better arc to engage this army from SoO.
Oh, excellent force fields there from Flying, and some of those Colossi will get sniped down here, but the problem is the Corruptors, they're not focusing at all on the air, and all of a sudden, SoO, he couldn't micro his units back at all, and this has been not the worst trade at all for Flying. I thought things would go way worse for him, but SoO is forced to retreat momentarily here. However, he will go into heavy Roach production, and look at this, a nice Roach run by in the main base. Flying essentially is on 2 bases right now, and he also looks like he lost his Forge and won't be mining at all here, so, you know, this actually ended up being very good for SoO.
This is the power after taking out the wall at the natural, and look at the SoO even going for the Nexus at the 3rd base.
Oh,
the Nexus cannon is down, but seems like it's not going to be enough, and the Nexus is going to get taken out.
Nexus goes down. There's nothing that Flying can do about this, and I mean, he will kill off a few of the units here, but the problem is the economy now for our Zerg player is simply out of control here. He's got 4 bases. He is constantly reinforcing with Roach, Hydra Corruptor, and, you know, Flying, he doesn't have many units left.
Yeah, usually this feels a little bit more like beta when the Protoss players went for the Colossus and started using the Void Rays to counter the Corruptors. But nowadays, since players go for the Roach Hydra and you know, they get the Corruptors out a little bit faster, you know, taking out the Colossus, you know, some Protoss players started going into Storms to counter against the Hydras and the Corruptors while making sure that they don't overmake the Colossus just to donate to their opponent for free. And once again, the Roaches get inside the main base.
Unfortunately for Flying, he's lost up to 20 workers right now, and oh no, he's going to get his 3rd canceled as well. This is pretty much the worst case scenario for our Protoss player, and
not even a cancel.
Not even a cancel on that, unfortunately. So Flying is essentially just running dry here. He has, you know, he has got a good amount of Void Rays, and he has some Colossi out, but the problem is SoO could essentially lose his army and still just remake it by the time Flying got to his main base and defend.
Now remember, Flying, even though he lost the 3rd base in the main army, he still has a, you know, good number of Colossus and good number of Void Rays. That's the reason why SoO's just moving around and trying to see when he can actually engage into this army. If not, then, you know, SoO, he's going to donate a lot of Hydras for free, and he needs to make sure he doesn't do that.
All right, it looks like we may have the final engagement here. These Hydras have absolutely ridiculous DPS, but the Void Ray count is very large right now, and the Colossi are doing a good amount of damage. These Force Fields have actually made this very cost-efficient for Flying, and you know, the supplies are starting to even out here. Flying doing his best to really just push forward here. I think he has to, it's a do-or-die situation for him here. He needs to press this advantage if he wants to potentially take the game, but no, he's going to go ahead and move back.
Seems like he wants to get another base up just to make sure he knows that his opponent cannot engage into this army efficiently with only Hydras and Corruptors because he has so many Void Rays out and few Colossus out for himself.
Yep, so, I mean, we're going to see the Hydras get remade here from our SK Telecom player here, and making a few more drones as well. Actually, he had no armor attack, so getting that, and Hydra's a little bit of a misrally here. Another hatchery being taken from SoO, so this will be spotted by those Phoenix. They may be able to do a little bit of annoying harassment here, but really not too much overall.
Yeah, well, he does take out the Hydra, and does not get the Queen.
And that Phoenix, that is one lucky Phoenix.
You know, this is an iffy situation for SoO to be in. He thinks he's ahead. He's getting up to 5 bases. He knows that his opponent is running dry in the main base. He's barely getting 3rd up, but he cannot engage into this army because of the Sky Toss tech.
Oh, but look at this. There is the dreaded Muta switch. 10 Mutas on the way, and we do have Blink on the way, thankfully, for Flying, but you know, his Blink Stalker count can't be too impressive at this point in the game. He's simply invested so much into the Colossi, into the Blinks, into the Void Rays. These Phoenix, though, doing a good job at being pretty annoying.
And remember, Flying did open up with a double Stargate, so once he sees some Mutas, all he has to do is start making more Phoenixes into his army, and he could be well fortified on 3 bases for now.
Yeah, he is getting those 2 extra Phoenixes right now, so I think he has spotted the Muta tech switch, but this is still going to be very hard for Flying to essentially deal with here, but he is moving out. His army is starting to get very scary looking right now. Actually, if we look at that army,
yeah,
that's a lot of Void Rays. That's 10 Void Rays. That's 5 Colossi, and have a good amount of Stalkers as a backup as well. And now the Mutas, they're running into the main base, but we do have Flying doing some harassment with those Phoenix trying to defend at this location.
And like I said, SoO, he wants to engage his army, but he doesn't have enough.
Oh no, this is not going to be good at all for SoO. His army getting completely obliterated here. And are we going to see SoO actually end up losing this game? Things were looking so bad for him, but he just, let Flying continue to build up that Void Ray and Colossi count, and now this game is starting to turn around. We do see Flying in a supply lead for the first time this game.
Yeah, like I said, all Flying had to do is fortify the third base and get as many units out as possible. Get those Void Rays out, get those Colossus out. And with SoO not going for the Swarm Host or completely transitioning into air, or even getting Vipers to pull some of those Void Rays for Abducts and then trying to pick him one by one, SoO doesn't have answer against this main army of Flying.
Yeah, SoO's basically, he didn't react to the Void Rays properly. I mean, he didn't get a lot of Corruptors out. I mean, Corruptors aren't great, but the Hydras, every time SoO tried to engage, it didn't work out well for him.
I mean, Mass Hydra is the answer, but only if you have the Viper.
Yeah, you need that Viper in order to deal with these units, and now we do have Flying moving back here a little bit, trying to make sure his forces stay pretty solidified here. And he has pretty much just flipped this game, turned it upside down.
Yeah, but Flying also needs to be careful, because if you look on the minimap, some of those Colossus are out of position, so all he has to do is make sure he regroups and then go for the counterattack. But we also have a counterattack at the third base of Flying.
Yep, this third base is under fire here from the Hydras and Roaches. This is essentially the last stand from our Zerg player, and now the Phoenix is coming back, and the Nexus Cannon is down. With the lifting up, with the reinforcements, Flying will defend this third base, and I can't believe it, man. Flying has done it. GG! Flying from a terrible position somehow came back into that game and managed to beat S2.
Yeah, like we said before, he was able to keep the Void Ray count up. He was able to save most of his Colossus throughout the whole game, and SoO, he wanted to engage the army and trying to finish it off as soon as possible, but with pure Hydra, you can't do it. You need the Vipers, you need some Corruptors in the army, even possibly adding some Swarm Hosts to pressure your opponent and make sure they don't move out on the map.
I just feel like he wasn't, like S2, he wasn't really cost efficient at all with his engagement, sorry, SoO, and unfortunately, if you throw away your army that many times, then you're going to end up losing the game. Your economic advantage isn't going to matter if the resource tab is completely in your opponent's favor.